All right, good day, everybody. Thank you for joining Splints and Whiskey. My name is Liz Artz, and I am super psyched because we have with us our new co-host, producer, and he's also today's guest, Sam Patrick. Sam's been with us since since about November. However, we made it official on social media this
I
week.
know. It's a big day when it's on socials, right? Jeez.
It's a, you've announced a commitment. I mean, this is like saying Sam's in a relationship
It's like yeah,
with
LinkedIn.
Splints and Whiskey.
Yeah, like a LinkedIn relationship. I guess you're right.
Right.
I just added all of like everybody's like congratulations on these new jobs. I'm like I've been doing them for a while. I'm trying to remember all the things I'm doing. That's the big one.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you that we're stoked that we're one of your many projects,
Appreciate that.
Whiskey. You're totally been the missing link. And obviously you've been a part of it for a while, but I created this platform because every time I'm out in the field and I talk to guys and gals that are, have had your job, military medicine, EMS, EMT, all of y'all that are serving the public each and every day, or your battle buddies each and every day, in medicine, you have all these stories and you've got these best practices and resources and things that you can share and grow from. And so it's fun for me to do it, but it's really a lot better when I have someone who's done it
Yep.
to help ask the questions and lead that awesome conversation. So thank
Uh,
you for
well,
coming.
more importantly, thank you for letting me have some control and reins and ultimate trust in this because yeah, it's been super rewarding. I never thought I would ever want to be camera facing because this is not comfortable at all.
I know.
Now that you're making me edit these, I'm like, cool. I have to listen to my own dumb voice. So sorry, listeners. I know how I sound.
Yeah, it's the worst. The worst is when you see
um,
yourself on the video and
yeah, that I'm just gonna close my eyes. Like, it's
yeah,
so good. If there's any video editing problems from here on out, it's because I'm doing it blind because I don't want to look at my face.
same, ditto. I'm with you, dog. Okay, well, I'm glad you're here. Listen, I
Yeah.
wanted to, okay, you talked for a second about the other day you kind of put in all of the projects that you're doing,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, and you're doing a lot of
Yep.
projects. So I want to kind of tell the listeners why I asked you today if we could have a conversation, even though we've talked before, but have a conversation um, about today's topic, which really is what are you doing next after leaving active duty,
Yep.
transitioning into the real world? It's not even the real world, both are real worlds, but transitioning to the next chapter
Yeah.
of your
100%.
life.
And yeah, I think that was what we're going to chat mainly about, and we'll let the rabbit holes divest or divulge from there. But yeah, military transition. Since my number one project I'm working on that's dominating most of my time currently is the work I'm doing for the Honor Foundation, which if you're not
Yeah.
familiar with, I highly encourage you guys all to go to www.honor honor.org honor.org. I will put a nice little subtitle up for you when I'm done editing. Beep boop beep boop. But yes, it's a transition fellowship institute based out of originally San Diego. It was created under the Navy SEAL Foundation umbrella initially. We've branched off to our own standalone foundation now. We have, oh brother, 11 campuses, I believe. I can't, if I count them up in public, I'll probably get them wrong, but we have multiple physical campuses at most of the main special operations hubs around the United States, and then we have two virtual campuses where we're able to capture anybody who's not near one of those physical campuses. The program itself, it is pretty selective due to the fact that, excuse me, we are servicing primarily special operations forces. We have a new program that just launched, actually, I think a month or two ago, and became fully online called Vector Accelerator, which is essentially a self-paced kind of build your own adventure, online-based transition program for anybody that's in the Department of Defense. So highly encourage anybody. Like, Vector Accelerator is the one for all. The Honor Foundation, the in-person fellowship program, unfortunately, we just don't have the funding or the logistical support to expand it to everybody yet. Hopefully we can get there. But yeah, it's a unique program in the sense that of just how we deliver our product. I'm going to take a quick break right here to collect my thoughts. So if you have any questions, it'd be great for you to ask them.
I do. So I'm glad that you gave me the baton there, bro. All right, you talked about both of these are a transition program. I appreciate the differential for the listeners, right? Because some of our listeners are soft and special ops, and those guys can go and guys and gals can go and join to the Honor Foundation. And
Yep.
then Vector is online and it can be for anyone. Vector
Yep.
Accelerator, I think you
Vector
said.
Accelerator. Yep. Yep.
Yeah. And then I talk with people all the time that are doing other things such as like skills bridge or
Yep.
um, lots of different places where people can go, but um, they're able to go and talk about, find out who they are
Yep.
and who they want to be in the next chapter.
Right.
Tell me about how that experience was for you. You retired last July, so it's almost been a year,
Yep.
right? And so, and you've done the program. Tell me a little bit about what that's done for you, because I see a lot of people struggling with what's next, and then they kind of go crazy. Their personal life gets all jacked up. They're
Yeah.
going, and they're just really, it's a really rough experience. They might take their first job. A lot of times it's like a job at like, I don't know, some entry level marketing or sales job or
Yes.
something that's
Yes.
not, it's just something they think might be good
Right.
for them, and then they quit after 6 months. It's like, ugh. So tell me what the steps were to you, or that help you in your transition.
Perfect. Yeah. Awesome. So thank you for reminding me to why the Honor Foundation is different. So most of the transition programs, even TAP, like the Assistance Program that the DoD spends, last I checked, $13 billion on, is really focused on employment. So when I went through TAP, resume, LinkedIn, kind of like understanding some stuff, workforce, tying in with your local Veterans Affairs offices. Where the Honor Foundation differs is we focus holistically. So the first thing going through the foundation, and when I went through G85, and I'm an alumni and full disclosure a staff member now.
Yeah.
But when I went through, like the first phase, you're like, oh, this is like uncomfortable in the best of ways, because you're forced to look at yourself. You're forced to go through like this evaluation process of who are you, because you've spent the past X amount of years serving others, team first, other people first, and you haven't had the chance to be like, who am I? Why do I get up every morning? What makes me tick? That's what we do in phase one of the Honor Foundation. I am not familiar with any other program who comes at it like that. You have a whole like there's 76,000 benevolent nonprofits supporting veterans. So there are
Whoa.
probably other people out there doing something similar, but not at the scale. And like not everybody, again, this is broad strokes. Through my research, most people are focused primarily on employment security post-military. What the metrics they're using at the DoD and VA level, they're looking for, like, the easiest fulfillment data to pull is employment, because hey, you can go into the IRS database and see what people are filing for taxes. It's easy.
Mhm.
Going to your original question, sorry, sidebar, too much caffeine. Let me add some more. How the transition went. Man, I started the program. I was one of the problem children in my cohort because I thought I had a plan. Initially, I was not going to go through the Honor Foundation until I met a friend of mine, Jim Fitzpatrick, in the commissary of Fort Lewis, and he's like, "Hey, dude, like, have you heard about this?" I'm like, "Yeah, man, I think I'm feeling pretty good about my transition. Blah 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 blah. Like, I got all these initiatives," and so I went into it feeling like the classic, the weird Sam Patrick thinks he knows everything. Who'd have
Yeah.
thought? Um, I went into it with kind of I don't need this mentality. Boy, was I
Yeah.
wrong. Boy, was I wrong. And I think that's the thing, is like we usually have a few people per cohort coming through that have that same mentality. And I'm going to tell you right now, like, from somebody who had that cocky attitude of I'm going to be fine, like it was a colossal game changer. To be fair, like I would even say for a lot of people, to include myself, like it's a life-saving program.
Wow.
Because of that first phase where you're forced to look at yourself, forced to figure it out. And also a big thing that the Honor Foundation does that I don't see with other programs is you get we call it a tribe, but you get another team of people who now you are connected with that you have shared the transition struggles with.
Ooh, I
So
love that.
you lose the camaraderie of one team room, and then you gain the camaraderie of the team room through the Honor Foundation, and then you enter the alumni network, and you are connected to THF for the remainder of your life. You're in all the alumni chats. Like if you are looking for a job in Tanzania, you can drop it in there, and someone's probably going to have something for you.
We're
And
actually going to interview somebody on
it,
Tuesday who has openings
yeah,
in
it,
Tanzania.
well, ironically, yeah,
Stand
that's
by.
subtle plug,
I
foreshadowing.
know. I didn't believe it either, but it happened the other day. I'm telling you, it's
Hmm.
real. So stand by for the next interview.
But yeah,
Sorry.
no,
Um,
that's good. But yeah, biggest takeaway: transition is wicked hard, like super hard. Do not take it for granted. Do not marginalize it. Do not think you have it figured out. Because guess what? Even if you have a baller job lined up, that's just one piece of the pie of the whole thing.
yeah. Well, let me ask you about that. Okay, so in my experience, over the past couple of years, some of my favorite people, it's like I've grown with them at
Yeah.
where, they might be, I'm going to use the Navy for an example in this one, but like, let's say they're chief when I meet them, then they're senior chief, then they're
Yep.
master chief, and they've got jobs lined up and their life is healthy and, they're doing great. And I've kind of grown with them and then I watch them transition. And oh my gosh, these guys that are like warriors and girls that are like warriors and they're at the top of their game and everywhere that when they're at work it's hey Master Chief, I mean they are the biggest person on the planet, right?
Yep.
And then out of the blue they got to go. I mean they're transitioning and it's just like okay bye,
Yep.
right? They have to go and transfer. Some of them have gone through like really major marital problems,
Hmm.
um lots of self-doubt, blah blah
Yes.
blah, and then they'll pick up the first gig, like I said before, they'll pick up the first job, but they're miserable, but they don't know
Yeah.
who to tell or what to do.
So
So,
what
yeah,
you're talking about, so identity. That is the
yeah,
term that so many people, especially careerists. So when you talk about someone who's a senior master chief or a master sergeant, first sergeant, sergeant major, master guns, whatever you want to call your E8,
yeah.
E9, or your colonels and generals like up,
Hmm.
is you've probably been in the military your entire adult life.
Right.
Like for me, I joined when I was 17. I got out when I was 38. So like I'm still very young, but like my formative years, the most formative years were inside of a machine.
Yeah.
Um, and so a lot of people's identity becomes the job. And that's another thing is like the military does a very good job at making the job your identity. That is so foreign to the rest of the professional space. Like first responders kind of dabble on there, but to be fair, it's unhealthy as hell to be fully identified as your job if you have to go home every day. Like the
You're right.
military, we can get away with it because on deployment, like I literally just put a post on LinkedIn about suicide or mental health and first responders, because like I joke sort of, but to be fair, there's a kernel of truth, like a lot of kernels of truth to this statement. It's like when I look at combat's easy when it comes to managing mental health because when I'm in combat, I'm deployed. The only thing I really have to focus on is the deployment. If I'm a
Yeah.
first responder and I go on a patrol, like if I'm running patrol as a cop and then I come off the road, I just saw X, Y, or Z during that shift. Now I have to go home. And if I
Yeah.
identify as the badge and the uniform, even when I take it off, you're not going to transition well. Like, so life, to be honest, as we're talking through this, like life is all about transitions everywhere, whether it's
Hmm.
daily, whether it's career, whether it's life, whether it's macro, whether it's micro, like everything you're doing is transitioning. And if you look at people whose mental health and they balance it well, the people who balance their mental health well are experts at the micro and macro transition process.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And generally, I think from what I've seen, honestly, they didn't do it alone.
No.
Anybody that I've seen that's had a really, and I have a limited view, right, but has a healthy transition where they're, I don't know, just where it's really working out for them, it's because they've done some sort of fellowship, some sort of transition, and they stay in the loop. So they've got that fellowship like you're talking about. It's crazy because you brought up first responders, and I've recently interviewed a guy that is a is a reservist. So he is military, but he's also trains the SWAT team, works at
Yep.
an ER,
Yep.
and is a paramedic. So this guy, every single one of his jobs, he sees trauma and he sees this stuff, right? He kind of went head to head against the difference when he's deployed
Yep.
and he's got the debrief time and I don't, yeah, time. That's what
It's
time with
time.
his,
Yeah, it's
yeah,
time.
time with his people for them to talk about stuff. Like they served and they were flying back from COVID, ground zero.
Yep.
They were flying back, but they had to, at that time, they had to quarantine for 2 weeks. No one wanted to quarantine because they wanted to get home.
Right.
But they were so thankful for the quarantine because they got to talk about all this
It's
stuff they saw.
Yeah, I want to touch on that. I'll get to that in a second. But like time, we're gonna start with time. Like, that was where
Okay.
my thought. Like, I'm not taking notes, so we're gonna just do all of this live. Hey, people. Um, so time and transition, military transition. If you're not giving yourself the time to do it right, and that's where like if you're a careerist, you need to stop working 1 year from your retirement date. You need to stop doing military things and focus on you. If your unit does not allow that, like you need to be aggressive about making sure that you're protecting your time. If you're a midtermer or a short term, like a 4 to 19 year guy, if you're getting out before retirement or not being med boarded, like you need to protect 6 months at least, very minimum. Because even if you look at like the medical evaluation board process where we medically retire people, it takes no fat, like you can't do it. Well, you can do it faster, but like it's between 180 days to 18 months. Like that's a traditional med board window. So even
Okay.
people who are getting kicked out of the military, not kicked out, being evaluated for medical fitness, and then potentially being removed from military service, they're still going through at the very least that 6 months transition window. And that's part of the thing in the med board process is they ensure that you do all the transition work. And honestly, like your medical package and your VA claim is already done by the time you get med boarded. So that being said, is if you're not blocking your calendar aggressively, no one's going to do it for you, especially if
Yeah.
you're a high performer. If you're a high performer, your unit's going to continue to run you to the bone until you have nothing less to give. And then like by the time you get there, like the transition assistance program that the DoD mandates, yeah, it takes 3 days. Like 3 calendar days is all you need to do to properly do the transition assistance program. So that being said, do you really want to spend 3 days getting ready for your next chapter in life, or do you want to be adamant about that 1 year process? You said something else and I completely forgot it. So I'm going to see if you can trigger my memory.
Well, I worked with a couple people at once they transitioned into the civilian space, but they were did a lot of DoD contract work. Um, and what what brought them back, I say they because they came to me. We worked together maybe like a year after they transitioned or something like that, right? What brought them back is because they their retirement date was, let's say, 24 June. They started their job at Avis Rent-A-Car 27 June
Oh,
and went
yep.
for it, right? And out of the blue, they're like in training and they're busy in the beginning, right? Learning all this new stuff. It was cool for a couple months, but then they were lost.
Yep.
And so they defaulted back to, they didn't think they wanted to go back into contract work or work with the DoD, but they did because that's where they felt at home. That's where they felt understood, you
Yes.
know?
Let
So
me jump in real quick since I'm going to have to do this instead of jotting down notes. So you community. That's what you're talking
yeah,
about there. That sense of community is real. The biggest void that I felt when I left was the loss of community. most people that I talk to, they may not be able to identify it by name, but there's a massive void. There's emptiness. Like you go and like if you're working at Avis, you put on the cool red shirt, you put your name tag on, you go work the desk, and like realize the people you're serving, their biggest crisis is the fact that they're in a compact and they need a bigger car. And if you have rode the boat and like, hey man, like I literally was getting shot at 3 weeks ago, and now here I am where you're like the biggest problem that people are dealing with is the fact that they don't have the right car. And
Yeah.
that alone, like that, like if you're going to go into something that is so kind of like different than what you were doing in the Department of Defense, you need to be mentally prepared that people's crisis problems are very different than your crisis problems, and you need to have patience for yourself and others, more importantly, and having
Yeah.
that grace. Um, which did not expect the conversation to loop that way, but like it just makes me realize that perspective is massive, and it's very hard, very, very hard for people to have true introspection to look at themselves and see how they're being perceived by others. And
Ooh.
it's and again it comes down to time. Like it's to do introspective reflection. Like I've done a lot of it recently due to the colossal just imploding of my life in conjunction with everything.
Mhm.
I've reflected so heavily and tried to pick back, like, because you peel layers. Like you'll get to one conclusion and be like, okay, cool, that's what I think it is. But then you keep peeling back these layers, and you're like, oh damn, at the base of it, and what I learned about myself, at the core of everything that has gone sideways, correct, upside down, and backwards and inverted. We're doing barrel rolls, yanking and banking. You're like, bah, 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 bah. Yeah, you didn't know there was going to be a dogfight in this episode. Haha, got you guys. Uh, I realized at the core that like I'm a mess. Like I'm a dysregulated mess of adult ADHD. And I
Mhm.
got to this point, like I hit kind of a crisis stage last spring. Can talk through some of the coping mechanisms I did later, but like what I got to is I recognized like, holy crap, man, you've been wearing masks, various masks, my entire life from
Yeah.
childhood because like I have to put this mask on to be the appropriate thing at this place. When I go to the hospital rotations, I got to put this one on. If I'm going to run the truck, I'm on this one. Like if I'm deployed with the unit, I'm looking like this. If I'm working with this customer, I have to put this one on. If I'm working with this customer, I have to put this one on. And you eventually just realize, like, I have no clue who the hell I am because I've had to take all these masks off the freaking shelf and put them on.
Yeah.
Um, and people don't understand that themselves. I'm like, I'm not saying this is for everybody, but as you're listening to this, think about your day to day and think about, okay, who are you at your core? If you can be your genuine self where no one's going to judge you, what does that look like? Because that's who you are. And if you
Yeah.
have to constantly change that, you got to be aware of like, okay, who am I at my core? If no one's going to judge me, what do I look like when I'm in my own quiet in my own home with no cameras, no video, no people watching me? How are you acting? Because that's you. And then be aware of how you have to change yourself to adjust and become a social chameleon for your operational environment. Um,
Yeah.
so like that's a big thing in military is like you're transitioning out of this where you're able to be this one thing. And like veterans, we swear a lot. We have dark humor. We are mission oriented. We come off as cold and whatever because we don't want to talk about it. We just want to do it. And a lot of people don't get that because guess what? Oh yes, the U.S. population, only 6 to 7% of us have ever served. Out of the
Yeah. Well,
entire country of the United States of America, only 6 to 7% have become like have been in the service. And then you start drilling that down. Like I look at some of the people I used to work with. Literally, the only person in the world, the only person in the whole world who can say they even have a similar experience to that person is that person. Like you look at some of the greatest sports figures, like Tom Brady. Yes, phenomenal quarterback, greatest of all time. But there are people who have relative parallel experiences to him by playing in the NFL and being highly successful. Like
right.
I've got people that I know who flew off the Kitty Hawk into Afghanistan and then were directly tied to the Osama bin Laden raid. Find me someone else in the world who can say that.
Yeah. Right. Right. That's so cool. Yeah, that's true. Your experience is individualized. That's always one thing that That's a good point. That's one thing that I think is really interesting. There's a brotherhood and a camaraderie and all of this stuff, but you're right. We all like everybody has a different path of how they get to where their endpoint.
Yep.
And and so, some you have such different experiences that it's hard to relate with anybody.
I think I can help you though. Like, so
Ex-
what a lot of people will do is they experience, like, I can't, the proper term. They basically look at other people's experiences and they marginalize their own. That is
Yeah,
something that I see happen all the time. Like in one of my group chats for the Night Stalker Association, like you have people who are like, "Oh, I wasn't a flight guy. I wasn't a mission guy. I wasn't this." Like, stop discounting yourself. Like
yeah,
I see this happen all the time, especially in military and first responders. We are so good at downplaying who we are. You don't need to be egotistical and have a chip on your shoulder about what you're doing, but stop marginalizing how unique you are. And that, to be fair, like actually everybody, like the human race, like stop comparing yourself to others and discounting who you are. Like, so
yeah.
what? Who gives a shit if the Kardashians have a bunch of money and they're doing this, that, and the other thing? Like, you are you. Live your life to the fullest, and stop trying to like be somebody who you're not, or try to live up to someone else's expectations. Like, and I think that's super hard. And I see this happen with people in the military transition is they don't really like they don't you don't need to have a plan, but at the very least know who you are and what's important to you. That way you can at least know when to say no. And I think that's the biggest thing when I look at what we do for the Honor Foundation. If there's one thing we truly teach people, it's okay to say no to something that doesn't feel right. And that's a hard skill. Like, that is probably the hardest skill to teach, especially veterans and first responders,
I would assume,
how to
yeah.
say no.
I would just gonna say that I would assume that when you have spent, whether it's 4, 8, 20, or 30 years serving, and someone is your commanding officer, somebody is above you, and they're telling you what to do, or you've got to follow the
You,
mission.
it's
It's everybody's mission. You have to say yes.
you're getting clear purpose and direction. Like, you're getting a good
Right.
commander, a good commander. Again, there's plenty of bad commanders. A good commander gives clear, concise commander's intent. So their formation knows, hey, I need to go do this. Unfortunately, that is not normal everywhere else.
Yeah. And so when you get out, I think that you would wrestle with, I'm big on time, like you said,
Yeah.
but I think you would wrestle with wanting to say yes to everything because you're used to saying yes, sir, or agreeing to what direction someone wants for you. And
Yeah.
that's true, man. It could be that I could come to you and say, Sam, you're awesome at networking. I love you so much. I want you to work for my company and sell,
Yeah.
tourniquets and blood and everything, right? And mannequins, right? And if you don't know who you are, because you've always said to me, like, Liz, I'm not a sales guy. And I'm like, you kind of are. And you're like,
I,
no, but you could, right? But if I pushed you hard enough, because I am a salesperson, and you didn't have the backbone,
yeah.
you might be like, okay, I'll take it because she told me I need to,
Right.
and you
Well,
just do it. It's not you,
uh,
right?
uh, and that's like, yeah, man, like, so that's the one thing too with veterans, like coming out of the military, like the work, like into the workforce. One thing that I've recognized, and no, I'm not a salesperson because like I can sell stuff, but I don't like selling stuff because the problem isn't stuff. We can go about the training, like human capital. Sell me some human capital, Liz. I'll sell that all day for you.
Yeah, I like people.
That's why I'm here right here. We're working on the human capital aspect of things.
Yeah, I
Um,
love that.
oh man, I just completely lost my train of veterans. So when we talk about, like, so DEI, the buzzword of DEI, everybody's like, oh, it's taboo. Well, guess who's a DEI hire? Veterans. Like, we are a diversity hire. We are a subset of the population, a very small subset, but and like, you can argue DEI policies, what the, like, the intent behind it. The goal is to get people into positions that normally probably wouldn't have an opportunity to even be looked at. Veterans are absolutely one of those populations. The problem is I'm not going to say anybody's doing this consciously, there probably are people doing this consciously. There are predatory hiring practices that are leveraged against veterans because people know, excuse me, that we are very bad at saying no. We will work ourselves to the bone for peanuts. We won't realize that we're being just completely taken advantage of for months on end. And then we have a very hard time saying, I need to leave this. Because one thing that like one of my biggest pet peeves that would leadership would say, well, it could always be worse. I'm like, yes, it could be worse. I could be a quadruple amputee being fed through a feeding tube and have a colostomy bag. Yes, I know it could be worse, but that is the worst leadership philosophy to have. But unfortunately, in the military, we're really good at just saying, this isn't so bad. It's like that meme with the dog sitting around the cafe that's on fire. This is fine. Like that is the veteran mentality. Like, I'm not on fire yet, so this is fine.
Yeah, yeah, that is so true. Um, I like what you said about predatory hiring practices to veterans. That's deep. Go into that a
Mm-hmm.
little, because we're
With
talking about people who are building their, I'm sorry, I got to get here. They're building
yeah.
their resume, right? They're, or CV, and they got 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
What do they need to look out for? They should take the 6 months. We've already said that, but
Yes.
6 months, let's say the time has been taken. What do they need to look out for?
So, yeah, that's the thing is like people also need to realize like the hiring process is not a one-sided discussion.
Right.
We just went through our mock interviews for the Honor Foundation, and one of the things one of our interviewers brought up is the interview never ends until you are physically out of the room and you are no longer observable by that organization. Like everybody's watching you when you come in for an interview. Receptionists, security guards, the cameras, anybody you make contact with, because the hiring manager, if they're smart, is going to go down the chain and talk to everybody like, hey, did you see this person do X, Y, or Z? Hey, security, what were they doing in their car before they got here?
Yeah.
So when you're looking at places to land post-military, one of the best things you can do is ask, hey, do you guys have a veteran, like a veterans program inside the organization? Like T-Mobile, for instance, my buddy Matt Luer ran their veterans initiative inside. Oracle has their own. Like most of the big companies have a veterans support organization inside the organization. And what I would do during the hiring process is like, hey, can I talk to somebody from that?
Dude,
Because
that's good.
then you can get the company culture from those people and say, hey man, this is what I'm looking for. Is this the right fit? Because you look at places like Amazon and Microsoft, like your high performing companies, they will work you to death if you let them.
Mhm.
And that's another thing. It's like veterans, we are awful at establishing boundaries. We're used to coming off the line. When you're a service member, you are US government property that the commander of your organization owns 24/7. So when you look at the Navy, when they're like, hey, we have 96-hour liberty, like the commander has to authorize your time off. So we are salaried, like it's like the military, when you look at the employment practice of the military, is a highly abusive relationship. But you must recognize as a person getting out of the military, like that is the only place in the world that people can do what they do, because you're not protected by labor laws. And once you're out, you have to understand like there are things in
There
place.
are boundaries. There are
Hmm.
labor laws.
Yes.
There are time clocks. There's time off. Like there's all of the stuff that the corporate America does is you're right. It's so different. I have a girlfriend who's in the Navy, and she's younger, but she's like Liz, when I set foot on my ship, they own me
Oh, 100%.
until I'm out.
Yep.
And we don't understand that as just civilians, right? We don't have that. Now we might think our boss owns us, but in real life they don't. We could sue them to death, right? And so
Uh,
they don't own us, but y'all do. So wow,
yeah, well,
that's
because that's another thing about the military is like you literally can get Uniform Code of Military Justice punishment if you get hurt doing something that was not related to military training.
Mm.
Like the old joke is like, oh, I got a sunburn and got an Article 15. Article 15 being the low degree of punishment because of damaging government property. Like
Wow.
if you do something to yourself that takes you off your operational readiness status, like you technically are like that is perfectly legal for them to punish you for damaging government property.
Wow.
So,
I never knew that.
hmm and
I love
that's
the idea when you said to ask for the veteran, ask, do you have a veteran transition program or do you have a veterans program? Because um, where I live, we're big Navy, big Army
yep,
here. And um, but when you brought up Amazon and Microsoft, that's because where you're located,
yes.
Pacific Northwest. For me, it's like we're kind of more of a contractor sort of society, contractor for DoD, but also trade-based skills. There's a
So
lot, construction and
the
landscape.
trades.
Yeah, right.
I want to hit on that real quick.
Yeah, let's do
Because
it.
there's one thing about the Honor Foundation that like I recently had a discussion with one of our leaders and other people. And actually we do cups of coffee with our people, and one of the things that came up is like in this cup of coffee I was doing with this guy, I was like, hey man, I kind of feel like an Honor Foundation failure because I don't want to go into corporate America. I'm like, put a pin in that. First and foremost, you're an Honor Foundation success story because you figured out you don't want to go into corporate America. I was the same way.
Yeah,
I was like, you figured out you don't want to waste your time doing X, Y, or Z. That is fine, but like you need to stop thinking you're a failure because you don't want to wear a suit every day. Like stop that right now.
yeah.
But like right now in the United States of America, we have such a massive gap in the trades and no one wants to do it for whatever reason. And like there are there's amazing programs. Like to be honest, the biggest success story of the military transition program is I think the skilled labor training that we can give to people before they get out. If you want to
Ooh,
go join the sheet metal worker union, you can come out once you're a journeyman. Like if you're become a journeyman in any of the unions, you're a made person. Excuse me, I'm all gassy, uh, and people discount that.
are you saying that that prior to they can join I'm sorry, I've never heard of this. They can join like a labor
Yeah. So
club or I'm
on
not being yeah.
on Fort Lewis itself, like I mean, this exists everywhere. I think Hiring Our Heroes does it. There's plenty of places that will do job training where you can get certificates and licensures before you get out of the military that will basically allow you to walk right into a skilled trade job. I know for instance, like on Fort Lewis, we have pipe fitters, we have the guys who do HVAC. I don't remember what union they fall under, but
Yeah.
you essentially can get the training necessary to come in. You do your apprenticeship, and then you become a card carrying member, and your skilled labor people are going to quickly make a lot more money than you will ever in corporate America if you do it right.
That brings up this point that I have experience with a company that I worked for. We sold franchises.
Mhm.
So when one of our favorite picks for a franchise, and we would loan them the money to start, what was were vets
Yeah.
because they did whatever skill trade it was, and there are so many different plans and resources around town. Like if anybody wants to hear about those nationally, there are a lot of places if you go like, hey, I am a card carrying member and I want to
Hmm.
start my company, then these aren't just like VA loans for your house. They're really
Right.
nice veteran loans to help you start your own business.
Yep.
So that's you're not really going into corporate America, you're going into entrepreneurship.
Yes.
It's different. There's also the opportunity to get your own LLC.
Yep.
People don't know where to go do that. These are resources that um, maybe you could somehow put on the chat or, something like that. But, and I can feed for the ones that I've had experience with, but yeah, being able to go out, get a loan, start your own business. That's a benefit of being a veteran
Yeah.
that, you know,
And to be honest, anybody who's interested in this stuff, like, so if you're in the military, your transition assistance program office, for instance, for us, it's the Hawk Transition Center on Fort Lewis. Every base has one of those with experts in. If you want to start your own LLC, they can walk you through it. If
that's
you want to
cool.
start your like so and the skills like so when you look at the transition program, like there are multiple tracks you can get. There's education, there's traditional employment, there's entrepreneurship, and under the entrepreneurship, like you get small business training, like so all the resources exist. Again, the DoD spends 13 billion with a B, $13 billion a year on ensuring that service members are transitioning out of the military with something to do next.
Cool.
There are some failures of execution because, again, when you try to scale something globally, like it's a global enterprise, the Department of Defense's transition initiatives, because it's international. When you scale it that large, you're going to have some dilution of quality, but at the core, the resources exist. People need to take advantage of them, just like the Honor Foundation. Like I'm beating the drum for recruitment right now because we have spring cohort coming up, we got fall cohort coming up, and we need to recruit people. Like I have to go out there and tell people, hey, come and do this free program. And oh, by the way, when I did the simple math, like the company math was like, it takes about $9,000 to $10,000 worth of resources to put this person through this program individually. When you start looking down at the executive coaching fees that get waived, all the faculty fees that get waived, like I'm arguing that's significantly short. Because if you have an executive coach who's charging $1,000 an hour for your traditional corporate clients, but they're taking Honor Foundation fellows on for free voluntarily, all right, we have a 12-week program. They meet 12 times. There's $12,000 alone in human capital and resources that this single individual is getting for free from coming through the program. No one else is doing that. No one else is doing that because it's a major lift.
Yeah, when you hire somebody in corporate America, I used to be in pharmaceuticals, right? So we put a number on everybody's head, you know.
Yep.
So I mean, just to have someone there for a year, just that first year, the investment in them is like 88 grand
Yep.
to 110 grand, and they may not work out, right?
Right.
And in reality, what we say to people all the time is, you know, it's so much more expensive to train a new employee than to
Yes.
train a friggin' existing employee,
Yes.
right? But I mean, you have to learn how to train them. Some of the things that I see, and I know y'all feel it in the military, but some of the things that I see, like bad bosses on the outside,
Yeah.
are the you know, my way or the highway type
Yeah.
bosses, just like it could be a my way or the highway type CO or whatever. But like I think that our people, our veterans need to know, like, you don't, it's not their way or the highway.
Right.
You know, there are flexible managers, there are flexible jobs, it's flexible time off.
Yep.
You know, there's so many different options. I would love to help people with that. One thing I do for fun, and it's so dorky, but it's been for years. I always said that people should on my tombstone, I wanted to say like whatever it says, like she's cool and beautiful wife, great mom, of my dog. But then I always wanted to say she got me a job. One of my favorite things to do is I like to write resumes for people. I have like this whole program and it's really, really fun. And I've done it for some of my clients that were vets, you know, that were transitioning. It's so fun because I help them like find out who they are and what's next. And it's like this own little ministry that I like to do.
Yeah.
But I think it's cool because I think that vets could talk to their resources of people, you know, like us. Maybe we're industry, but we're not vets. But I'm industry with you guys, where I could say, yeah, I don't see you there, but we can help
Yeah.
career coach too.
Well,
Those are some resources you could use as well, you know?
so like you're hitting if you need a volunteer opportunity, I have one for you, Liz. So like
I will do it.
yeah. So actually, shameless plug for THF and volunteers. So like for us, we need volunteer coaches. We need like resume review volunteers. We need mock interview volunteers, like mentor volunteers. Like so for in the THF umbrella, as we continue to grow, we need more people who are willing to give their own human capital. And to be honest, people who have not like had internal military experience, but are understanding of the struggles are absolutely massive because you can help temper expectations.
Right.
And that's super valuable because like you can have someone who came through the machine and they came out the other side and now they're doing great things at Amazon. But like having a true civilian that while you have had parallel lines of effort that have skirted DoD, you've never been inside the actual belly of the beast. It's huge because it gives perspective. One thing I want to talk to, you brought something up that made me think about family. Like my own personal struggles with like I have 3 boys. Unfortunately, my relationship did not survive the military, and dealing with the kind of the fallout slash challenges slash all those other things from that. And you mentioned it earlier about people's lives tend to, like, it's pretty common for that to happen towards the end of military service.
Yeah.
Because you don't realize, like, you kind of haven't focused on the family as much as you should. So that's
Yeah.
another thing too with transition. Like the Honor Foundation, again, shameless plugs, like we focus on the family. Like we have transition as a team sport. Like it's part of our program where spouses can come through the program, part of the program with their significant others, or even boyfriend, girlfriend. We don't care. Like baby mama, baby daddy. We don't like it's if you have a connection with somebody, they can come through the program and you guys can help learn how to have an effective transition together. Because
That's
a lot, yeah.
sorry. One of my, well, it's happened with several people that I'm friends with. They had to deal, so they're getting out and they're scared to death because they think they've got to get a job in 2 seconds, blah, 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 right? Well, their spouse is ready for them to get out and take a little time. Then
Yes.
they go through this a whole time where they discuss resentment. I mean,
Yes.
so I love the idea of being able to transition together, even if it's that you got therapy or
Hmm.
worked with like a chaplain, maybe an Army or Navy chaplain or something like
Hmm.
that, where you could say, um, we know there's going to be resentment, which is innate. I mean, I would assume it's innate, right? I was married to somebody who traveled all the time in the beginning. He was
Hmm.
not a military person, but he traveled
It's
100% of the
travel
time.
is travel.
Right. And I did have resentment that I was not aware of.
Yep.
My husband probably does now. I mean, I'm not, we'll have to talk about that after this podcast. But it's like we have to make sure that we are dealing with the holistic whole family
Yes.
focus
The
because
whole
now you're home, dad or mom is finally home,
yes. And
but
and
they
and
might be
that's
like not used to that. They're not used to
no,
that.
100%. No, like that's one of the big things. Like it's a running thing. It's like when are you going to leave again? Like you
Yeah.
don't realize like the whole family unit has been based around you being gone in the
Yeah.
military. And then if you're not prepared for what does the house look like when I'm home, because like there is a primary home runner, there's a home boss, and the home boss has ways they like to do things, and they don't like their processes messed with. And then if you have this interloper, now the person who's retired and out, who has
Yeah.
too much time on their hands, if you start messing with the home process, you're going to have friction.
Yeah.
Um,
God,
and and that's like I've experienced this firsthand. Like it creates resentment, it creates distance. If you're not aware of it, it can become toxic and spiraling and snowball like crazy. And there's fallout, and it's like a lot of guys like the fallout is discounted, and then they finally realize, oh crap, like I am on the struggle bus because of this.
yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, like I could I'm my own personal like anecdotes with this are exhausting. They're deep. It's not easy to talk about, so I'm not going to. But it's like it's just something. Don't take it for granted,
Hmm.
because the military is going to end.
Right.
That family and camaraderie you thought you had, the minute you walk out the door, it keeps going. There's like the reason why the Department of Defense in the United States is as effective as they are is you're all replaceable. Period.
Yeah.
That's how it has to be. If you get this is gonna be crass. If you get shot in the face taking the beach, someone needs to step up and fill your role.
Hmm.
Period. Like that's how we
Yeah.
function.
Yeah.
But guess what? Your family, you're not replaceable to them. So
Yeah.
that's another big thing that like even if things go sideways, if things go south and like things don't work out, like you still are not replaceable. Like you still fill a role. Like I had a good friend of mine, um, the day of his retirement, unfortunately killed himself.
Oh,
Uh, and has like had the whole unit, had the whole package. Um, and like what I again like what I like, I'm not going to interpret his situation, but I can speculate is when you realize like, hey, I've lost this identity. When you make the military your identity, this is where the catastrophic 22 a day comes from, where you're like, I don't know who I am anymore. I've lost my entire community. It's like, nah, mate, you still have an entire community. Go to the VFW and go see them.
yeah.
Go do the Honor Foundation and stay part of the tribe. Like just because you sign a DD 214, which is the discharge paperwork from the military, your life is just starting again.
That's yeah, and
It's
that's
not ending. It's not ending. You literally get to do whatever the hell you want. This is your opportunity and a lot of people like don't do well with that because they're institutionalized.
yeah, they don't well, they don't know what yeah, they don't know what they want, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna ask you something that's like we're having this positive like yay next steps, but this is for the people that I work with the most. So selfish, but Mama Bear does protect her peeps. That's why y'all let me stay in with you and act like a poser. One of the biggest things I hear is that I call on corpsmen and I call on medics all day long. Well, their skills a lot of times are not transferable, right? I hate that shit. During COVID, they these guys were running like I had one of my favorite corpsmen was running a hospital in LA. He was the only person on the floor because everybody else had COVID. They were at
Mhm.
400% capacity. And when this guy retired, he wasn't a nurse practitioner. He couldn't find a medic job. You know what I mean? So what
S-
do the medical people do?
So, you're hitting some nails on the head. All right.
I
So
had to ask for everybody that I love.
there's strengths and then there's skills. I can teach anybody a skill. What I can't teach is a strength. So if somebody intrinsically has something that they're good at, I can then look at that and say, all right, here's a skill for that. So like that medic who ran the hospital, like he's got to change his approach to how he markets himself because that's healthcare administration. Unfortunately, healthcare administration requires certain degrees, certain letters to be considered hireable off the bat. But
Yeah.
if he worked in that system and somebody saw him doing that, there's already somebody inside the system in that C-suite level that probably could hand carry his packet down to the hiring manager and say, I want this person for this job. Write them a position.
God, I
So
love that.
why I say this is like one of the things we do at THF that's so important. And you talked about my networking ability. Like if you're not networking, so that guy who ran that hospital, if he doesn't have everybody from the leadership team in that hospital on his LinkedIn, he's wrong. If he doesn't have them where he can call them up straight up, you're wrong. Like you have to set yourself up for success. And I got on LinkedIn, I don't remember when, but I realized like I don't like social media. I absolutely hate social media. To me it's one of the worst things ever. But I realized I'm throwing away all these connections by not remaining connected to them. And at some point, I would like to not have to work super hard to find a project that I want to do. Exhibit
Yeah.
A, like you literally reached out to me on LinkedIn, and this is how this became a thing.
Yeah. I've loved that part. And I've liked about what I like about you and a lot of the people that I've interviewed on the show. Um, they they figured out that networking thing with LinkedIn or social media or whatever. Like I'm on most, but socially I could
Yeah,
I'm not
it's
over it, but
exhausting.
I know it's so ill, but for my profession, very, very helpful. And
Yes,
I've
yes,
noticed it's like that's how you guys really that's a great place to market. It's a great place to share ideas.
it,
And you're not a nerd or like a narcissist if you put
yes,
yourself on
and,
LinkedIn. You
and,
really are
and and that's a big thing. So like we had one of my fellows bring that up in this cohort. It's like, what do you do about somebody who was like the worst person in the team room, but now they're like this Instagram ranger that I'm like,
yeah,
they're marketing themselves. Don't get angry at them because like as soon as you get out, there's no one who's marketing you. Like
right.
and you look at LinkedIn, you look at Instagram, you look at all these socials, like it's a brand. You're branding yourself. You don't have a marketing manager to do it for you. The big people do. Like you look at the big socials, they're not run by the individual who's tagged in it. It's someone else pulling their strings because it's branding. And you look at, for instance, you look at my brand on LinkedIn. It's very mental health, incident management, training focused. And guess what? Most of the things that have landed in my lap unprovoked are in that realm
Yeah.
because you're branding. And it's uncomfortable to put yourself out there, especially soft, like quiet professional. Like it's uncomfortable to do that. So find the way to do it where you don't feel like you're exposing yourself too much. because you don't have to
Right.
you don't need to be you're not you don't have to humanize yourself on LinkedIn. Like that's what Instagram and Facebook are for. And if you don't want to do that, stay off the platforms. But like if you're trying to build a professional image, like the original social media platform wasn't Facebook, it was LinkedIn
Oh, that's
for
good.
for business professionals. Like it's divulged a little bit, and guess what? Train your algorithm to keep all the stuff that's not professional off of it, and you're fine.
Mm, that's killer. I, I feel I didn't know that. I need you to help me train my algorithms. But
It's called click ignore. Like anything you don't like, ignore it, and the algorithm will stop feeding it because they're like, oh, this person's not giving us ad dollars for sitting here longer.
okay, well, okay, good to know. All right, so I love that. I love everything that you're saying. So kind of close it up for these guys. We're pretty much at an hour,
Yeah,
of our discussion. I feel like there's a bunch of killer resources I definitely didn't know about, and maybe our listeners could put stuff in the feed if they have
yeah.
experiences with others. But I love what you've been telling us today. Thank you. So why don't you end it for us? Take it away.
Yeah, all right. Well, yeah. So the biggest thing is like we can talk about this for forever. I think the biggest thing is don't go through this transition. If you're doing DoD transition, to be fair, any transition in life, don't do it alone. Like
Yeah.
counsel, like talk to your family, talk to your friends, you build your support network. I literally just put this out there earlier. It's like you build your safety net while you're on the ground. You put your parachute on while you're on the ground, and you're not trying to do all this rigging while you're in free fall. Like, don't get
Yeah.
to the position where you're in an acute crisis, free falling, and you don't have the support you need. Um, and again, I this is kind of my passion, helping people kind of transition through the complexities of life, and particularly in the veteran space. So feel free to reach out to me anytime. I do have to give a shameless shout out to good old John Young, who helped do our redesign. So all the stuff you're seeing behind Liz and I, John Young of Sketchy Designs. I'll put his info if you're looking for some work. Great guy. I'm wearing one of his T-shirts. The front side was not his, but the back side is. Here, I'll give it. Let's see. There it is.
Oh, so cool. Love
Yeah.
it.
So John, great dude. I'll put his contact info if you're looking for work. Anybody
Dude.
who's in the veteran space that is eligible for the Honor Foundation, www.honor.org. Go and see if we got room for you. If you're looking for a donation, like or a place to donate, great program. 10 out of 10 can recommend if you're trying to volunteer your time as well. And for everybody in the Department of Defense, if you're looking for transition help, we got a program for you now through Vector Accelerator, so check it out. And just if you can't go through our program, go through a program. For the love of God, don't do this alone, and figure out what your benefits are.
God, you're killer. Thank you so much. If you guys who are listening today have other things you want to add or questions or whatever, put it in the feed, please. That's another place you can network because we're a community of military medicine and all other medics, pre-hospital mainly. So let's all work together, keep our mental status clear, keep ourselves continue to hold up our battle buddies
Yep.
day in and day out. And thank you so much for your time. As we talked about at some point, our next interview is with another killer person. And so we're looking forward to having you guys join and invite a friend. And if you've got someone that you want us to interview that is in military medicine, pre or post, or really in pre-hospital medicine
Yep.
all over anywhere, then send her a name. We'd love to interview them. So thanks again, and you guys have an awesome, awesome day.
And we'll see you next time, guys.